Welcome to my series of review videos. We're going to be going over review for Chapter 12 in your AP Statistics textbook. This covers Units 8 and Units 9 in the AP Statistics course sequence. Let's get started. This is going to be free response question number 1 in your handout, and you can access this handout with this bit.ly link, bit.ly/AP Stat C12REV, and it's going to pull up this Google Doc if you'd like to follow along or print it off for your own records. This is 10 pages, so it's pretty long. We'll break this series of videos up by section, so each free response will get its own video. Each set of multiple choice questions will get their own video. Here's your first one. Entertainment electronics. A large electronics chain store has one store in the city of Greenville. One factor in deciding whether to build a second store in the city is whether the current store is serving all residents equally well, or whether unusual proportions of residents from different parts of town are using the store because it is located on one side of town. The national managers of entertainment electronics divide Greenville into 4 geographical regions and determine the percentage of residents who live in each region. Here's what they find. And it gives a breakdown north, south, east, and west in different percentages. And that region is basically just percentage of population. The second table saying then the managers take a simple random sample of 250 shoppers at Greenville's entertainment electronics store and determine what part of town they come from by asking for their zip code when they are checking out. And we have a set of values. These are your observed counts. So these 121, 47, 62, and 20, that's what we actually see. And the question is Greenville's only entertainment electronics store used by a higher proportion of residents from some region of town than others? Support your conclusion with an appropriate statistical test. Think about what test we're going to use. It's going to be some sort of chi-square test. Maybe you want to pause the video and try it on your own, and then I'll start going over it. This is going to be a chi-squared goodness to fit test. We know it's a goodness to fit test in this case because it has one sample. So just kind of a little cheat sheet for goodness to fit is if we're looking at one sample and one distribution, or one variable, I should say, then it's going to be a goodness to fit. And we're trying to see if the observed counts basically match your expected counts and see how far off they are. In this case, our sample was the people at the grocery store, 250 shoppers. So it was a random sample at that store. And our variable in this case is going to be region. So the variable is going to be region. And I don't have two variables to compare to each other. And so I'm not going to be doing any sort of other chi-square test. And I don't have multiple samples, so I'm not trying to see if those distributions match up. So that's your goodness to fit clue. See if you can come up with a set of hypotheses. In this case, I just followed the question stem. The question says, is Greenville's only entertainment electronics store used by a higher proportion of residents from some regions of town than others? So I stated my null as entertainment electronics is used by the same proportion of residents in each region of Greenville. In other words, I would expect about 41% of the people shopping from the North region to be representative of my store, and 23% to be representative customers of the store, 22 for East and 14 for West. My alternative then would be basically trying to state the question. Entertainment electronics is used by a higher proportion of residents from some regions of Greenville than others. So my null is no difference. My alternative is there is a difference. It's a different set of proportions. And I'm going to state that it's going to be at the 5% level since we weren't really provided that. So that's how you set up your hypotheses. That's your state part. You name the test and you set your hypotheses and give an alpha level. See if you can set up your conditions. The three conditions you want to check for in this is random, independent, and expected counts being at least 5. For these two here, for the random independent, man, they're just going to give them to you in the problem. So you have to go through and look for them. And in this case here, simple random sample of 250 is going to meet your random condition. So that's checked off, but make sure you write that. You want to also, since we're sampling without replacement, check that 10% condition and basically say 250 is less than 10% of all the shoppers at entertainment electronics. We can assume that's true. You don't just say expected count shall be at least 5. You have to check them. You have to calculate them. So if you know how to calculate them, do that real quick. Just a reminder, the expected counts is the number in your sample times the individual proportions. So you have your individual proportions for each of your regions, and we have 250. So just do those 4 calculations and list those here. You can throw them in the calculator like so, and just jot them down. And after you write them down, you are ready to proceed with the test. So at that point, I would kind of go into the do part, make sure that your calculator is ready to set up to do the test, and write a few of the steps down in that process. Let's go. The front of your formula sheet will have the chi-square test statistic. It's not a bad idea to write that down. In practice, we'll probably write a couple of the iterations of that formula, but we're going to use our calculator because if you have a TI-84 calculator, you should be able to run this test using that technology. So let's enter that data in your L1 and L2. To run the test in your calculator, you're going to put your observed in L1, your expected in L2 into your stat menu. And then you're going to go to stat tests. And I click the up arrow a couple times and I'll find chi-squared GOF test. That's what we're going to run. It pulls data from your L1 and L2. You have to change your degree of freedom to match the number of your categories. So we have 4 different categories, north, south, east, and west. So your degree of freedom is going to be 1 less than that. Go down to calculate. And you can list this information. So I would write that information down in your do part. If you need to, you can access your contributions. That'll help you answer questions like which one of these proportions seem to be the most off. But this question doesn't have to address that, so I'm not going to do anything with those right now. So we're going to write that down. So jot that down on your paper. Now, it's obviously expected that you write down the chi-squared test statistic, 12.576, your p-value of 0.0056, and your degree of freedom of 3. You should also write a couple iterations of this formula. So make sure that you put your observed and expected into that formula and do it a couple times, and then use your calculator to get the rest. So just a couple of those steps will get you underway. Write those down on your paper for full credit and make sure that you bold or highlight the chi-squared actual test statistic and the p-value because that's what you're going to make your conclusion based off of. So now that you have your p-value, let's make your conclusion. You know what to do from there. Of course, with our low p-value, we are going to reject the null hypothesis since it's less than 5%. We have convincing evidence in this case that the store is being used by higher proportions from some of the regions in Greenville. And if you had to do a follow-up question, you could see which analysis that would be the most contributions. You have this 3.339. I'll go through and get all these, 1.91, 0.89, and 6.428. Now, your highest contribution is the West category, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the most highest used proportion. It has to be in the positive direction. So when you look at your expected values, you look at the West and you see the West was expected to have 35, but it actually only had 20. So that's actually negatively contributing. The one that's most positively contributing proportionally is going to be the 121, the North. It seems like there's more proportionally contributing to the North than expected. I lost my contribution, so I'll calculate those one more time so you can see those. Yeah, so that's the next biggest one, that 3.33. The one that's negatively the most, or furthest away, is going to be the West. And that wraps up question 1. I'll end this video here, and the next video is going to be over question 2. Thanks for watching.